For this yin yoga practice, you'll need a bolster, a couple of blocks, a blanket, and your yoga mat. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and please subscribe. Let us begin our practice today on our backs. Lie down in Savasana. Place a folded blanket under your head, or even a rolled up blanket under your knees. And if you can't keep your legs straight like I have here, bend your knees and let them collapse towards one another so that your low back is nice and flat. Let's begin with breath in through the nose and out through the nose. Inhale, let the belly expand fully and lungs expand fully. And exhale, slow down the exhale, pressing out all that stale air. Soften your facial features. With your next exhale, relax your cheeks, your jaw. Feel tension seep off your shoulders. Loosen your limbs, soften your hands and feet. Allow the belly to rise and fall gently with the wave of your breath. Let's start to awaken the body by moving your fingers, rolling out your wrists and ankles. Just start to fire up those muscles and gently let the head drop side to side. Walk your feet in a little closer towards the body, towards the hips. Let both knees drop towards one side, back to the center, and over to the other side in a controlled windshield wiper movement. Gather your knees into the chest and give that a little bit of a roll out, keeping your knees together. Draw small circles to massage the low back. And then roll your way over to your favorite side and carefully press your way up into a comfortable seated position. Our first pose today is going to be a child's pose with emphasis on heart opening and shoulder stretch. To do this, you may need a blanket between your calves and your thighs, perhaps a bolster for your belly, and a couple of blocks or something to double as a couple of blocks. And allow the hips to sink towards the heels coming into a child's pose and place the forearms on your blocks. And you can place a bolster under your belly, or as I'm doing here, remove it so that there's more space for your chest and belly to rest in between your thighs. You want to be able to feel a very gentle stretch through the front of your underarms. And to do this, you can keep your arms stretched out straight on your blocks, forearms touching the blocks. Or for a more comfortable position, you can also grab opposite elbows and allow your elbows to rest on those blocks. Let the head drop gently between the biceps, forehead touching the ground. Once you get settled in this position, begin to focus on your breath. As you breathe in through the nose, allow the breath to wrap around the back of the body. And as you exhale, feel yourself soften into this pose as you release into that shoulder stretch. Soften your feet and your thighs. Allow the hips to sink and try not to do too much work here to hold those hips in place. You want to let gravity do the work for you. Even as we seek some depth in this pose, you always want to maintain softness. Breathing deep into those inner thighs. Resisting the urge to move. As the body begins to soften, check in with the mind. Oftentimes in these yin poses, our mind tends to wander. And we'll bring it back. Bring yourself back to the moment so that you can focus on your breath Focus on the different sensations coursing through the body. If you had grabbed opposite elbows, go ahead and switch them around just to look for some balance. And once you're there, take a moment to lengthen that spine and then sink in deep into this shoulder stretch. Anytime the body signals to you that you need to come out of this pose, please do so. Feel free to modify, feel free to adjust, feel free to change up the pose. And once you've got your pose, you settle in there and look for some more stillness. Once the body begins to settle, you may even want to remove the blankets and props, other props. Here I remove the blanket from in between my thighs so that my hips can sink in a little deeper. You do what's appropriate for your body. Find your breath. As with all yin poses, we slowly make our way out of our child's pose. Take slow movements. Little adjustments might be nice, perhaps coming into a downward dog just to stretch those legs out, little circles, little movements straightening out one leg and the other, coming into tabletop and doing some side stretches. And as we did some work in our shoulders, maybe a little bit of movement in those shoulders might feel good as well. Our next pose is Sphinx pose, a great chest opener, a great heart opener. Place a blanket under your pelvic bone so that it's more comfortable. It's just an option. Have your feet about hips width apart or slightly wider. If you need a little support under the chest, grab that bolster or a pillow and place it under the chest for a little bit of support. Make sure the spine is long, draw your chest forward, and then relax into the bolster. Your forearms are parallel to one another, palms facing down and onto the ground. You may like to get a little bit of a neck stretch here as well by letting the chin dip down towards the chest. As you settle into this pose, consciously release any tension in those legs. Soften your feet. Release the calf muscles. Relax the thighs and the glutes. If you find that you no longer need the bolster, go ahead and remove those bolsters and set up for Sphinx pose. Have your elbows at about a 90-degree angles, aligning the elbows under the shoulders. Relax the shoulders back into the sockets. Draw your chest forward and continue to breathe. There should not be any compression in that low back area. If you feel any compression, continue to draw the chest forward. It's a forward and up movement. Soften your face. Releasing from Sphinx pose, just release forward, placing your forehead on your hands. You can stay right here or bend the right knee like I'm doing, and just stacking one hand on top of the other, lay your right cheek on your hands for a little cushioning, a little support. And we'll stay here, enjoy this moment of rest. So very gentle stretch to the inner thighs and a little bit into that low back area. Close your eyes. Relax. We'll slowly make our way back up into that little back bend once again, making your way into Sphinx pose. Or, as an option, you might want to come into a deeper stretch into seal pose. If you had enough of stretch in Sphinx pose, you'll stay where you are. To come into seal, walk your feet a little wider, maybe towards the edges of your mat, and walk your hands wide as well. From there, press into your hands to lift the chest a little bit further off of the ground. Go as far as to straighten the arms without locking out the elbows. A slight bend to the elbows. Just like with all our other poses, if this is too much, feel free to gently come out of it and return to your Sphinx pose. Again, think of a forward and up movement. Anytime you need more, you can walk those hands in a little closer towards the torso. If this is too much, walk your hands away. Focus on your breath. Keep it flowing. Very carefully, we begin to release all the way down onto the floor. Stack one hand on top of the other, resting your forehead on your hands, and a little bit of movement might be really nice here. Shifting the hips side to side or lifting your feet off the mat and coming into windshield wiper movement. Stay resting on your belly or stack one hand on top of the other. Bend your left knee, keep the right leg straight, and rest the left cheek on the ground as you turn your gaze over to the right side. Once again, a very soft, restorative yin pose. Just relax here, enjoy. Deep breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. Even though this is a resting pose, try not to let the mind drift. Stay with the breath. Focus on different sensations through the body. Perhaps noticing the way the body connects with the ground, with the mat. Final few breaths. Let's begin to make our way out of this pose very slowly. Press your way back up into a tabletop position on your hands and knees. And just on your own, do some cats and cows, a little bit of movement through the spine, or make your way into a downward dog just to stretch those legs out and lengthen that spine. It might feel good to pedal out the feet here. Next, we're moving into a hero's pose. Now, this pose will look different from body to body, and I'll try to give all sorts of options here. A really great way to do this pose is to have your bolster at an incline. Here I set up a couple of blocks under the bolster and set it up at a really nice incline position so that you can rest the torso on the bolster if you wish to. You might have to remain seated upright. You might have to remain seated on a bolster. In a hero's pose, you have your thighs parallel to one another, feet close towards the hips as best as you can. You can make your way down onto your back like me, so it really depends on how you're feeling the stretch. You should feel it all around the front of your legs, perhaps a little bit into the hip flexors and the abs. So if this is too much for you, there's always an option to come on up onto your hands and just lean back slightly instead, just resting on your hands. Once you've made your way down, being very mindful as you make your way down. And if you find that this is really easy for you and you want a little bit more, you can reach those arms overhead, grab opposite elbows, and that gives you more of a heart opening effect as well, more of a shoulder stretch. And that's just an option. For a gentler version of this pose, just let your arms relax by your sides. Once you've settled into this pose, we return back to the breath. Deep inhales through the nose and exhale out through the nose. Always listening to the body, being very mindful. If you need a little bit more than this, you might even be able to remove your blocks so that your bolster is a little closer towards the ground. And if you're really flexible to the front of the body, those quads are really flexible, the knee is safe to come into a deeper stretch, you can remove the bolster, remove the block, and come all the way down onto the mat without any props beneath you. Feel free to adjust this pose for comfort by placing more props under you, or look for more depth by removing props beneath you. Final few breaths. Slowly make your way out of this pose, coming back up. Take a little bit of a stretch for those legs. You can take windshield wipers. Give the legs a little bit of massage. For our next pose, we will be coming into a supported fish pose. You want to make sure that the bolster is at a good incline for this pose. Go ahead and lay that spine down on your bolster. And if you want, you can keep those knees bent, collapse towards one another. This is a great position for those legs to be in if you have problems with your low back. Otherwise, you can stretch those legs out on the mat. Or even bring the feet into cobbler's pose, soles of the feet together, knees open. Now, this is a great heart opening pose to be in. Let those arms stretch out about shoulder height, enough to feel those muscles right beneath the collarbone. You want to stretch out those muscles, so let those arms open up in a T position, or adjust until you feel that stretch. And once you're here, once you're in this pose, settle in and enjoy this more restorative yin pose. Don't feel like just because you started the pose one way, you have to stay the same way throughout the pose. If you like to straighten those legs at any time, go ahead and do that. Final few breaths. If you have those knees open up in cobbler's pose, help them come back together. Still remaining on your bolster or your pillow, allow both knees to gently drop side to side in windshield wipers, just to release any tension in that low back area. And then roll yourself over to one side so that you can rest in a fetal position on the pillow, on the bolster, or off of it. Just with a gently rounded spine, just for a moment. And let's make our way out of that and come into our next pose. It's going to be a great stretch for the side of the body. And to do this, you'll need a bolster. The bolster or pillow set up parallel to the short edge of the mat. And then have your arm above that bolster so that the bolster is placed on the side of the body. Keep the knees bent. Stack one knee on top of the other, the left knee on top of the other, and take your left hand and reach it overhead so that the bicep is close to the ear. As you stretch your arm overhead, you can use a block to support the weight of your hand. Other arm is just relaxed. So it's a very gentle side stretch here. If you feel that you need a little bit more, you can lower the block where your left hand is, or you can get rid of the block altogether, and that should give you a deeper side stretch. Stay with this pose. Feel that you need a little bit more to this pose, you might want to think about straightening that top leg, that left leg, and that should give you just a little bit more of that side stretch. Once you've got that pose down, just settle in once again and let gravity do the work for you. Your job is to stay present, to keep breathing. About 3 more breaths to go. Very slowly, begin to make your way out of this pose. You might have to move that left shoulder a little if there's any stiffness there. But slowly make your way back up to seated. And just take a moment to sit it upright for a spinal twist, twisting one way and then the other. Just working out any kinks in the back of the neck as well. Just a little roll of the head. We can make our way over to the other side next, keeping the props in the same configuration. Just roll over to your left side so that the left side of the body is on your bolster, and take your right arm, reach it overhead. You can start off with a block under that right hand. And then if you feel that you can change the height of the block, lowering it down a little or getting rid of that block, you can go ahead and do that. It should give you a deeper side stretch. And finally, you can also straighten that right leg, straighten the top leg so you get a deeper crescent shape. And once you've got this shape down, once you've got this pose down, allow yourself to relax back into this pose and soften. Keep breathing, deep breaths. Final few breaths. Very carefully, we make our way out of this pose, coming back up into a seated position. Again, it might feel good to take some spinal twists, come up to seated and very gentle twists, turning to one side and then the other. And a little movement to stretch out the neck as well should feel really good. And now we're going to come onto our back in another version of supported fish pose, and a deeper heart opening pose. Keeping the bolster in that same position as before, we're going to lay the back of the body, the shoulder blades, on your bolster so that the shoulders are hanging slightly off of the bolster. Arms stretch out in a T position, and you can place a block or two under the head. You can choose different configurations of the legs just as before. You can bring it into easy pose. You can have those knees bent and collapse towards one another. Cobbler's pose, or straighten the legs like I'm doing now. Adjust until you're comfortable. And this is another great heart opening, chest opening pose. If you feel that this pose is a little bit too much for you, you can always place a rolled up blanket or a softer pillow underneath the torso instead of this firm bolster that I have here. Be sure that your neck is long. You shouldn't feel any compression in the neck. Allow the breath to flow freely, deep inhales and long exhales. And relax your legs. Relax your arms, your hands. Breathe deep into those shoulders. And with each exhale, allow yourself to sink a little deeper into your pose, into your supported fish pose. Final few breaths. We slowly make our way out of this pose. Bring your hands in closer towards the torso. Slide your feet in towards the hips. Coming onto your side, resting in fetal position with gently rounded spine, and really settle in and relax. When you're ready, come on back up to seated. Again, some intuitive movements in between poses I encourage. My favorite to do is windshield wipers. Bend your knees and let those knees drop side to side. Next, we're moving into a spinal twist. And we're going to do this by making use of the bolster. Place the bolster on your right side of the body. And it's going to be towards the lower end of your body, lower part of your body. Roll over to your right side, keep your left leg straight, bend the right knee and place that knee on your bolster. And we're going to try to rotate the left shoulder down onto the mat, and you can do this by keeping the left hand on the body, rotating the left shoulder down towards the mat, or using the weight of your arm to weigh down that left shoulder. Place your arms in a cactus position, so in a goal pose position, forearms facing upwards. And again, if this is uncomfortable for your left shoulder, keep that left hand on your torso instead. Otherwise, cactus position, goal pose position for the arms, and then turn your gaze away from that left knee. And this is a great stretch for your abdominal muscles, your low back. A twisting pose in general is wonderful for the health of your spine. Let's stay here and enjoy this beautiful twist. Final few breaths. To come out of this pose, carefully roll back over to your right side, bring the left arm back towards the right, and then rest here for a moment. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Place the bolster on your left side of the torso towards the lower part of your body and roll over to the left side. Do your best to keep that bottom leg, the left leg straight with the right knee bent. Drape the right knee over the bolster. And we're going to try to encourage that right shoulder to relax down onto the mat. And if possible, bring the arms into a cactus position, into a goal pose position. And then turn your gaze over to your right side. Once again, if it gets a little bit too much with that right shoulder, keep that right arm on your body instead and just work to slowly rotate that right shoulder down towards the ground. Otherwise, if all is well, then bring that right arm down onto the ground, coming into a cactus position. Keep that breath flowing. And we'll take a final few breaths here. And to unwind from this pose, bring that right arm back towards the left side so that you're on the left side of the body. And just rest there for a moment. Whenever you're ready, you can roll onto your back. Draw the knees into the chest. Give that a little bit of massage for the low back, rolling out those knees. Or perhaps some windshield wipers, feet on the ground, knees to one side and then the other side. And finally, we are moving into our Savasana. Take your time to set yourself up for comfort as this is our final Savasana. It might be nice to have a blanket under the head. And since we have a bolster and a couple of blocks handy, I'm going to show you a variation here. We're going to place the bolster under the knees and have a couple of blocks for your feet. Blanket for under the head just for a little cushioning. As the body starts to cool down here, you might want to grab a hold of some blankets for warmth, or perhaps grab a hold of a sweater and put on your socks. And once you're set up, allow yourself to relax. Soften your legs. Relax your calves and your thighs. Allow your hips to grow heavy. Allow your breath to rise and fall gently with the wave of your breath. Relax your arms, your fingers, your hands. Relax your shoulders. And soften your jaw and your cheeks. Relax that space in between your eyebrows, your forehead. Feel calm all the way up to the crown of your head. And with calm, relaxed body and calm, relaxed mind, enjoy your Savasana. Very peacefully and very calmly, begin your journey back onto your mat. Feel refreshed and renewed. And start to bring sensations back to the body by moving your fingers and toes, rolling out those wrists and ankles. You can let the head gently drop side to side. And then make your way over to the right side to come into a fetal position. Stay here for a few deep breaths. Stay here for a few breaths and enjoy. And then press your way back up into a comfortable seated position. I thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that. Namaste.